Okay, good afternoon. Um, the background on this is a mugshot from the Arizona Department of Corrections, dated November 5th of 1980. Like I said, it's time to give you a full-on history. And I think what you're going to learn through this history is exactly how people tend to take information that is not what they want you to believe it is, and it's not even factual, and turn it into something that has been presented for the last 16 years as true, which it's not. And you're going to see that here shortly. January of 1980, I moved in with my stepfather's brother, Bill Smith, and his son on East Pennsylvania Avenue, or Street, can't remember if it's Avenue or Street, in Denver, Colorado. I got a job at Pizza Hut on, hang on a second, I want to say it's Broadway, South Broadway. Thank you. I had to make sure I had the right street. On South Broadway, just north of the South Broadway and East Evans intersection. I started out as phone and cashier. Um, Immediately went into working both opening and closing. The manager saw that I learned things fast. I picked things up really quick. And in opening, I pretty much picked up all of the opening procedures and operations and protocols. And working with him in closing, I picked up, everything from running the register to filling out the daily sales reports, waste reports, um, what was sold, managing and accounting for the cash, etc. So I wasn't there. I wasn't even there a month, and I had been made the assistant manager. And so that you get an idea of the time frame here, um, I had been made assistant manager of the Pizza Hut on South Broadway at the same time, actually just a couple of weeks before Pizza Hut started announcing and offering its pan pizza. Yes, its pan pizza was debuted in the winter spring of 1980, for those of you who did not know. I continued that job, and to this day, I cannot tell you what happened with the manager that had hired me. But one day I went in to open, only to be told that I was the new acting manager, that the former manager was no longer working with the store. At 18 years old, that was a lot. I'm not going to tell you it wasn't. It was a lot. And for a while it worked. But to be completely honest with you, at 18, I still had issues where if you got on my nerves and made me angry, I went off and let you know. And it had gotten to the point to where I had been pushed to the limit And I called the district manager one morning and said, "Hey, the store is yours. I'm out of here." And I left. I went to work for Red Barn, which was it was a fast food joint in Denver. It was chicken and burgers. Worked for Arby's. Worked for a um, full service restaurant that served breakfast, lunch, and dinner off in Cherry Creek. Was a really good egg pan guy. And I mean, I was always good in culinary arts. I was self taught through my early childhood and teen years. So it was something that I was really good at. And you will see over the years how that transpired. But I got into the gay bar scene, started going out. I never was a beer drinker, just so you know. Never could stand the taste, but never had a problem getting into a 21 or older establishment and being served drinks. I was a screwdriver drinker. I was a vodka drinker to begin with. And at that time, Colorado still had 3-2 bars as well, which were the alcohol was 3.2%, which it was sold to individuals between the ages of 18 and 21. Anything over 3.2 and hard liquor was still 21 and older. Got into the gay bar scene, went out a lot, actually did my first and only hit of acid in one of the bars that was on the corner of Lincoln and I want to say 23rd or 27th. It was just before 5 Points. It was quite popular, and there was a piano bar that was in an older hotel next door. Anyway, the bar eventually was set on fire, arson. Um, so through that scene, I met a gentleman by the name of Max, who was a local fashion designer who had his own store and business in Cherry Creek. And he had convinced me to go over and look because at that time I was really into clothing and style. I was into making GQ look like it didn't have a clue. So I went and visited Max and his boyfriend in the shop, and I'm not going to lie to you, I fell in love with his designs. So I ended up buying quite a few items from Max, and I wrote him checks on non-sufficient funds. And before those checks were taken care of, I had left Denver. I had borrowed a friend's car, even though I had never driven a stick shift in my life. It was an Audi Fox, just so you know. And it was stick. And I drove from Denver, Colorado, to Tucson, Arizona, and then from Tucson to Elfrida and Douglas, Arizona. I went to Tucson because I had recently left the Vision Quest program. And I went and visited with some youth counselors that I got close to, Steve and Martha Bloom. I went to Swan to see the educator and teacher, Miss Lou, who I just absolutely adored. I just thought the world of that woman. And I went to the lodge in Elfrida, to say hi and kind of ruffle some feathers, because when I left Vision Quest, I had been sent from the lodge in Elfrida to the Colorado Springs program after it was discovered that I and one of the employees had been engaged in a sexual relationship for quite a bit of time. And Vision Quest at the time's policy and attitude was that I was always at fault. I was always to blame. They did not know how to handle an openly gay kid. Uh, that was proven my entire time on the wagon train, because I was openly gay and it made them that nervous. All the other kids were sleeping in teepees. It didn't matter whether it was raining or snowing. I always was required to sleep outside, which was fine. Pete Rinaldi, for almost 2 years, daily used to constantly tell me I was the abortion that lived. Again, I understood. It was the 70s. They had no clue. And to be honest with you, I still don't think they have a clue, but that's neither here nor there. So, while I was in Tucson, I visited with Steve and Martha, stayed at their house for a while. In the process, I did indeed take some personal checks belonging to Steve and Martha with me, and I did sign Steve's name to them. I cashed a few for $25 at the 7-Eleven down the street, and I used his checks in Douglas, Arizona, at the old Gadsden Hotel to register and pay for a room. This would be in June of 1980. I had gone and driven out to the lodge, which was not too far from Douglas. It was in Cochise County, and to visit. And while I was at the lodge, they entertained and visited with me while they had the Cochise County Sheriff's Department dispatched out. And that's when I was arrested in Cochise County on June 20th of 1980. So this next form you're going to see, this next scene, this is the actual judgment and sentencing document from the Cochise County Superior Court. This is a judgment and sentence that's basically dated, judgment of guilty and sentence, that is dated on the 20th day of October of 1980. And it refers to the fact that after pleading guilty to falsely making, offering, or presenting a forged instrument, class 4 felony, as charged in the indictment, the defendant was asked whether he had any legal cause to show why sentence should not be pronounced. There was none. Sentence was imposed as follows. It is ordered committing the defendant to the Department of Corrections to be imprisoned in whatever institution that the department shall deem appropriate for a presumptive term of 4 years, effective this date, with credit for 120 days served in Cochise County Jail to date. For classification purposes for the Department of Corrections, it is the finding of the court that the offense involved a class 4 felony and is not of a dangerous nature as defined in Arizona Revised Statutes 13, I think that's a 601, but I really can't read it, and that no priors have been alleged in the indictment. It also points out that counts were dismissed at the movement of the prosecuting attorney, and it states that I entered a plea of guilty to the charge, which is correct. What you will see on the right-hand side is a mugshot that was taken on October 31st, I think that is, 1980, when I was transferred from the Cochise County Jail to the Arizona Department of Corrections Reception Center at Alhambra in Phoenix. What you will see on the left of the screen is a Arizona Department of Corrections mugshot that was taken on November 5th of 1980, which I am going to say was my arrival at the Arizona State Prison Central Unit from the reception center. I mentioned to you the checks that were written in Denver before I left. What you are seeing on your screen, and this is one of the documents I'm going to tell you, will give you an idea of why people really should be careful what they say and publish and post before they actually confirm and verify stuff. This is the court case. It was indeed for theft, 2 counts to be exact. It was in Denver, Colorado. The alleged offense date says that it was, it's gonna be on the next one, but it was actually in March of 1980. The charges were not actually filed until August of 1980 when I was already in custody in Arizona. I want you to notice that you will see the highlighted areas. I highlighted these for a reason because this is actually from the Colorado court database. And this is why I tell you that you have to be careful. And even these agencies tell you to be careful before you quote things. It says arrest date, December 8th, 1964. Yet the plea date was February 24th of 1981. Same thing on charge 2. Arrest date, December 8th, 1964. 1964, on December 8th, I was 3 years old. Just so it's clear. I did plead guilty to both counts of theft because I was guilty, and that's the way I've been my entire life. This took place in 1981 after I was already in custody of the Arizona Department of Corrections. By law, if there are detainers placed on incarcerated individuals, those individuals have the right to request that they receive a quick and speedy trial, which I did request that be done. And Colorado did make arrangements to come and pick me up, take me to Denver, and we took care of it. I was sentenced to 4 years of unsupervised probation for the charge, which was to run concurrent with the 4-year sentence I was serving in Arizona. Shortly thereafter, in 1982, May of 1982 to be exact, would be when I obtained my first legal name change from my birth name of Lawrence Wayne Sinclair. It was obtained in the Superior Court of Pinal County, state of Arizona. It was done legally. It was granted and ordered on May 10th of 1982 by Judge McBride. It legally changed my name from Lawrence Wayne Sinclair to Larry Ashit Silvas. You will see the minute entry and the order on your screen. I was still serving my sentence in the Arizona Department of Corrections at the time I filed for this name change. It would be right around, the name change was granted 5 days, actually, after my first parole board hearing, which was held on May 5th of 1982. It was denied, and it was denied based on disciplinary history within the system. I had my next parole hearing in August, at which time I was granted parole, and I was released on parole in September of 1982, where I went to Phoenix and first to a couple of, I guess, halfway houses that were meant to be a stepping stone for you to find work and, you know, save money for rent or whatever in the process. I was released on September 15th of 1982. On January 7th of 1983, while out on parole, and I'm going to stop before I read this to you or tell you what this is and go back. I was on parole. I went to work at Marriott's Camelback Inn in Scottsdale, Arizona, in their food and beverage department. Like I said, I was quite talented in the culinary arts and did very well. I was employed and I got along with everybody I worked with in reality. Anybody that's worked in restaurants knows that the environment, especially amongst employees, can be somewhat entertaining and dramatic. In this particular case, I worked in the kitchen where two female employees that I worked with were roommates in an apartment complex that I eventually actually rented an apartment in. One of those female employees had the reputation of being the kitchen slut. In other words, she was known for having sex or doing everything in her power to have sex with every male that ended up working in the kitchen at Camelback Inn. I did not know at the time, but apparently she had gone around telling everyone in the kitchen that she was willing to bet that even though it was clear I was gay, and I said I was gay, that she could end up getting me to have sexual intercourse with her. And they even planned a party for her to accomplish this feat. It turned out that everybody I worked with literally were placing bets on whether or not she could accomplish that goal and when, how much time, and to what extent. I was invited to this party at their apartment. The whole kitchen staff that wasn't working was pretty much there. I got quite drunk and I was called into or told to go into the bedroom. And when I went in, the door was closed behind me, and this particular female was lying on the bed butt naked. I guess she thought something was going to be appealing or attractive to me in some way, but she tried to convince me to go over and take my clothes off. And what eventually happened is I walked over and literally threw up on her from her head to her toes, in which she responded by screaming at the top of her lungs. Everybody comes running in. Everybody starts laughing their asses off, and I leave. After that particular incident, our coworkers didn't let her live it down. I mean, I really didn't care one way or the other. I just thought it was somewhat interesting that everybody was making bets on whether or not I would screw this woman, knowing good and damn well that I was trying to get laid by every guy that I was working with. But nonetheless, things between me and these two females soured real quick, which was fine with me because I lived on my own. I went in, did my job, left. I had a former prison inmate that I was very much into and was sharing a life with, so it didn't bother me. As the holidays came, I got some time off and actually traveled to Los Angeles to visit. And over the holidays, apparently, I had been accused of some things by this woman, even though they knew that I was on parole. I mean, it wasn't a secret. But I had been accused of some things that I did not even know I was accused of. So what you're seeing here is an actual parole report requesting a warrant for violation of parole. And what I'm finding and what I found interesting at the time was a lot of these allegations. As far as the drinking of alcohol, that's true. I, in fact, was drinking. As far as opening a checking account without consent of my, well, actually, I had permission of my parole officer. I just kind of used it for things other than what I was authorized to do. And of course, I did purchase a vehicle on an installment loan that was technically in violation. But what got me the most was that I was violated because these two females, and the one who tried to convince me to have sex with her, apparently on January 6th of 1983, called my parole officer and then went to the office in person, stating that she would be willing to testify that on or about the 4th of January, that I entered her apartment without permission, threatening her and a companion with 2 culinary knives with approximately 8-inch blades, stating, "I will bury you together," and made inferences that he would splatter guts all over the floor. Interestingly enough, none of this ever happened. I'm not a violent person, never have been. And I thought it was interesting that she claimed that I threatened her with 2 culinary knives because, for those of you who don't know, all of us working in kitchens, in resorts and hotel food service operations like that, we maintain our own knives. It's a tool of the trade. But she did apparently make these threats, and even made some insinuating that I would shoot her, although no gun was ever produced, is what the report says. And then, of course, it makes claims that I apparently also made threatening remarks to 7-Eleven employees down the street from my apartment, which never took place. But anyway, I was eventually arrested and violated by my parole officer. And again, this states why. That I did write checks on a checking account in violation of my conditions of parole. Claims, again, that threatening with 2 culinary knives. Claims that I made threats and harassing and pointing items. In fact, one of them even went so far as to say that I pointed items that appeared to be a gun or could have been a gun, even though I've never had a gun. That's page 3 on the left side of your screen. These are all dated January 7th. On the right-hand side of the screen, this is a copy of the warrant for my arrest on January 10th of 1983. Oops, wait a minute, I'm gonna go back. Okay, yeah. All right, let's go to 8. On the left-hand side of your screen, this is a document. Again, this is the arrest warrant, page 2 of it. This is on the right side of the screen is a mugshot where I was actually taken into custody 3 days before the arrest was authorized. But that's okay. They're allowed to do that. I was looking for something. Hang on. I may ups. Yeah, I do. Sorry. I have some items in the wrong order. On this particular screen, on the left-hand side, I want you to see this. This is an actual case analysis and review that was done on February 15th of 1983 by the Arizona State Board of Pardons and Paroles in reference to the affidavit for parole revocation and the allegations made by my parole officer. And it says that assisting with rent, shoes, which are required for job, blah, blah, blah. Employment, cook, $4.85 per hour, 40 hours per week. 12/16/82, travel permit to Los Angeles, California for Christmas holidays. January 4th of 1983, travel permit to Los Angeles, California, possible employment and relocation. Now I want you to pay attention to that January 4th of 1983 date, because remember, here, where is it? I was accused of entering without permission the apartment of the Camelback Inn kitchen slut, threatening her with 2 culinary knives on January 4th of 1983. Even though I had a travel permit issued on that very same day to leave for Los Angeles. And yet, at the time, my own parole officer couldn't see that. But that's okay. And I will tell you why here in a second. I got to get rid of something. Also with this report, they set a parole violation hearing for me for, where is it? Hearing was set for March 2nd of 1983. And in this particular report by the Arizona State Board of Pardons and Paroles, I want you to note the bottom as follows. Allegations 1, violation of condition number 4 of the conditions of supervision in that he knowingly issued insufficient checks on a closed account on January 1st, 1983 through January 3rd, 1983. Allegations 2, 3, 4, and 5 were dismissed due to insufficient evidence. Now, I point that out for a reason, because a lot of the stuff that's been put out about me, especially since 2008, that's been repeated and claimed to be factual, referred to and actually accused me of spending time in prison for unlawful possession of a gun, accused me of being charged with threatening to kill people with culinary knives, none of which happened because those things didn't happen. Regardless of the accusation that was made to the parole officer, the parole board found that there was nothing there to do with that. And there wasn't. But again, this is what I was saying when I tell people, you really need to know and verify what you're claiming you're using. And some of them apparently obtained copies of certain Arizona Department of Corrections records and chose to misrepresent the facts, which is why I have my entire Colorado Department of Corrections file for that very reason. On the right side of your screen, on March 2nd of 1983, which was my parole revocation hearing, I was authorized and reinstated parole. In other words, no, I was not remanded back for violations of parole. After the hearing and after the evidence, I was granted parole again. But it doesn't matter because it's been misrepresented. On the left side of the screen, just a little more than a month after being re-granted parole, as a mugshot, April 21st, 1983. While waiting to be re-released on parole, I had filed for my second name change, which was from Larry Silvas, changing to Larry Vizcarra Avila. You will notice that the petition was granted on July 25th of 1983. Same judge, McBride, Superior Court, Pinal County, State of Arizona. Despite people saying that I've used fake names, these were my legal names at the time. Nothing fake about them. Again, the order for the second name change, July 25th, 1983. I was ultimately reached my maximum discharge or my mandatory release date, which was January of 1984. My absolute mandatory discharge date, which was September of 84. Under law in the state of Arizona at the time, they have to release you a minimum of 6 months, which is referred to as your mandatory release date, prior to your mandatory discharge date. I went to work after being released the second time with the restaurant chain Tony Roma's. In fact, they were opening their first franchise in the Scottsdale area. I got a job and trained and opened the Scottsdale restaurant. At the time, I had met a corporate chef by the name of Stuart Cochelle and others from the Encino, Beverly Hills, Santa Monica stores that were out in Arizona training. And I had been asked if I would ever consider going to work for the corporate out in the Los Angeles area. And after experiencing some issues with the owners of the franchise, after all of the corporate people left and they decided they wanted to change the way we were trained by corporate, I actually got permission from my supervising officer and went out to the Los Angeles area, and I did go to work at the Encino store, and worked at the Encino store before transferring to the Beverly Hills store. While working at the Beverly Hills store, um, became somewhat an assistant kitchen manager with the Beverly Hills store. Also did a lot of the catering on behalf of Tony Roma's for the district managers. For those of you who are familiar with the nationwide disc jockey Casey Kasem, the district manager was a friend of his and his wife's, and his wife had opened a new salon or new boutique out in Malibu, and the district manager had made arrangements for Tony Roma's Beverly Hills to actually cater it. And I was the one that actually went out and did all the cooking and serving on it. After that, I came back and I went to the Santa Monica store and took over as the kitchen manager chef of the Santa Monica store. Interestingly enough, while at the Santa Monica store, because the nightclub was upstairs, we had one night where we had a couple of nightclub visitors that were chasing each other through the restaurant, through the kitchen. One of them with a knife trying to stab the other, and bullets shot from upstairs that came through the floor into the kitchen. After, I'm going to say probably, I want to say about 6 months, my belief that the kitchen staff deserved to be paid for the work that they were doing. I had a difference of opinion with the district manager, and I left the Santa Monica store, at which time I moved to New York. And I'm going to go back to where you see me on camera. I had moved to New York, never being there, never living there, having zero clue, but that was me at the time. I felt comfortable doing that. I've always managed to make ends meet and to make a way and get work and find a place to live. And when I first got to New York, I spent some time around Times Square. Ended up staying in a hotel that was also offering daily or nightly room rentals to the city for the needy and whatnot, and ended up getting hired on there to do night auditor work for a while. I met a couple of Indian, and when I say Indian, I mean gentlemen from India. Got to know them, became friends, was invited to move into the apartment in Rego Park with them. At the time, had no idea that it was like 8 guys from India, but it was great. We became great friends. I also ended up going to work at the Tony Roma's in Greenwich Village, and ended up going to work as garde-manger in the Waldorf Astoria, which was operated by Hilton, and I think still is operated by Hilton. So I did fine. I ended up finally leaving New York and moving back to Colorado. In fact, I moved to Golden, Colorado, and I'm going to end that here because I say part 1 is 1980 to 1984. And this is it.